morning and welcome to The Scene with Doreen. I'm your host, Doreen Taylor, setting the scene to help you guys find out what's going on locally and beyond in TV, movies, music, sports, the arts, and everything in between each and every Thursday morning right here on Philadelphia's #1 talk radio station, Talk 860 WWDB AM and 97.5 FM HD2. We do have a great guest with us today, and this is a person who is sort of on trend right now with some of the things that are going on in the news. And before I bring her in, I would like to just do a lead-in to give our listeners a little flavor of what they're going to expect. So check it out. Listen to this.
Welcome to Love Connection, where old-fashioned romance meets modern-day technology.
3 judges, 3 opinions, 1 verdict.
We've reached now a decision.
In a court of law, it's called a hot bench.
From the Warner Brothers Studios, here she is now, Ellen DeGeneres.
From Hollywood, it's Jimmy Kimmel Live. Tonight, Jessica Chastain. Golden Globe winner Patricia Arquette. And music from Childish Gambino.
So my guest, Hedda Muskat, is a 2-time Emmy Award-winning producer from The Ellen DeGeneres Show. She's a WGA member and a DGA affiliation with the original talent producer of America's Got Talent. Her producing credits include Judge Judy's Hot Bench, Jimmy Kimmel Live, which you just heard, A Current Affair, America's Got Talent, which you also heard a little bit earlier, Dr. Phil, Judge Alex, Christina's Court, Moral Court with Larry Elder, Howie Mandel's Show, Martin Short, and the PBS children's series, A Place of Our Own. She also did consulting work on Divorce Court, revealing her secrets and how she found passionate litigants to book on the show. And there's just... Also, you heard in the beginning, there was a huge connection with the Love Connection, where she was a writer on that show for many, many years. And it is just a pleasure to have with me today on this fine morning, Hedda Muskat. Hedda, how are you?
Wow, thank you for that amazing intro. I'm really privileged to be here with you, Doreen.
Oh, thank you. I'm very honored to have you here as well. And your resume, it just goes on and with all amazing, one after another, amazing things that you're doing.
I've been blessed. I've worked with good people, and you do your best work, like in any job in the world. And you're lucky if you have good people to follow.
Yes, it's true. Now, how did you start in the business? Did you always want to be in Hollywood in some capacity, or were you just kind of thrown in? A lot of people I talk to, they have different kinds of varying stories on that. Did you always want it? It was your dream, or did you kind of just stumble in because you just thought you'd give it a try?
No, nobody really. It's very rare stories when you hear people stumbling in. It's a passion. It's a work of passion. Like, again, any other person out there who has a passion for art or whatever they're doing in their life, you have to have a passion for it. So I was born and raised in Toronto. And from a very young age, I'm like 100 years old now, but no.
You just barely turned 21. We're going to go out and have a drink when you're able to drink, okay?
Exactly. Thank you. So in Toronto, I was at a very young age when I was, watching television shows, children's shows, Bozo the Clown and all that. I was so glued to the TV. Like I wouldn't leave the TV. There was just something mesmerizing about it. There was a connection I had. I think the TV shows back then that I was watching, like the Flintstones, the Jetsons, all those cartoons, they were my friends. So I just said, I want to be in this industry one day. But in Toronto, it's hard, especially for a woman, to get started in the industry in the 70s and 80s when I was graduating from college and then getting my first jobs at CBC, CTV, and the local stations, working on game shows. It was very hard to move up the ladder. And that means like getting out of a position of just booking guests and being an associate producer to actually being a showrunner on a show. So it was very frustrating as far as like advancement for women back then, and let's say in the 80s. And I took a vacation with my friends in my late teens, early 20s now, to LA. We just came to LA for vacation, just a bunch of girlfriends, hanging out on the beach. And I fell in love with it. I fell in love with the city. The people here were so nice. And I said to my friends, I said, I'm going to move here one day, but I had no idea how I would do it. You know, you need a job. You know, I still was I had to graduate college. You also need a green card to come
Oh,
here.
that's
You
right.
know,
You don't think
this,
of that. You're our neighbor, but you don't think of that. Yeah.
yeah. So I met with, I networked while we were here on vacation for 2 weeks, went to different clubs and, schmoozed with the doormen so we could get into the, VIP area and just kind of schmoozed with people. And at the end of the day, when I said I want to come here, they said, well, it's very hard to get hired while you're still in Canada. You would actually have to move here
Hmm.
to, to really be considered seriously for any jobs. So I let that go because, it was just, how am I going to move here? I'm still like have 2 years left of college and no money, no job. So there was no way. And you need money to come here, obviously,
Oh,
to
it's
rent an
very
apartment.
expensive. For those that don't know, it is extremely expensive on the West Coast.
Yeah, so I gave up the dream basically. I graduated college and just started working in television in Toronto, which I was very lucky because I'm going to give advice to people. If anybody ever says no to you when you're coming or you're a millennial and you're interviewing for a job
Mhm.
and they say no, go to a small town or and get your feet wet. Try not to take no for an answer. Find out a backdoor way to get in. And this is what I did.
Mm.
This is a huge story, actually. This is really what propelled my career. So, when I was still in college during the summer, I wanted to work at CFTO TV in Toronto, which was part of the big network. So, I guess it would be like KBC here. It's a local station, but a huge station. And they were doing the Sonny and Cher show there back then and a bunch of other like variety shows. So I wanted to maybe work, working as assistant just to get my feet wet, as a summer job. And they wouldn't hire me. And then I just said, I'll just make coffee. I'll do anything.
Hmm.
And I was a little persistent, but not in an obnoxious way, because, I've seen that and I've probably been that person one time, but just more in an endearing way, like just networking with people. You go to the local coffee shop where they're going to hang out, where the showrunners are going to hang out. Anyways, I got the job for the summer making the coffee.
Mm.
But this is why I'm going to write the book, How to Not Mess Up Your Career. I actually got fired after about 2 weeks
For
on
making
that summer
coffee. What did you do to
for
the
making
coffee? What
coffee.
did you do to the coffee?
I made the best cup of coffee,
It
but
was
what I
too
did,
good.
I started rewriting scripts for
Oh.
Cher's monologue. So I would befriend like the writers on the show. And I, you're out of college or you're in college, you're, out of, the school system for the summer, you've
Hmm.
got 2 months off. And in college, you're a big shot. You're doing all these local shows and while you're in college and you walk out and you think you own the world. So I felt like, oh, I could write this so much better.
Hmm.
So change up the interest. Anyways, they fired me. And the best piece of advice that my boss who fired me, uh, I forget his last name was Bly, but the smartest advice he gave me, I was devastated being fired from the Sonny and Cher show at 18 years old and, humiliated. All my friends knew that I was working on this big show for the summer. My parents were so proud of me.
Hmm.
Come home, I said I got fired. And of course, my mom's like, okay, what did you do wrong? Instead of like, maybe what did I,
That was my mom too.
like, what did you do to F up your career?
Uh-huh.
Your first job, to propel your
It's
career.
all your fault.
It's all your fault. But anyway, the advice he gave me was, Hedda, we hired you to make coffee. And that's all you really should have focused on. The fact that you stepped out of your lane in your job, even though I think what you wrote was a little better, I was
Mhm.
like, wow. And I'm thinking I'm going to get a promotion now. He says, as much as I think what you wrote had a little more flavor, more flair, a little more, hip to our audience. I was like, thank you, Mr. Bly. Thank you. I'm really excited. I mean, I would love to work in the writer's room.
Mm.
And he was like, oh, one day, maybe, when you graduate college, sure. But I'm going to have to fire you to teach you a lesson because that's all I needed you for, was to make coffee. That's all. You should have made the best cup of coffee and not like leave the coffee pot overflowing, making it too strong or too weak, and then doing a job that you weren't hired to do. So I'm going to fire you. So you will always remember that any job you do in life, to do that particular job the best you can do, that's how you're going to get noticed. So if I made a great cup of coffee, I would have been more noticed.
Well,
So
I'm
yeah.
glad you did not make the greatest cup of coffee in the world, because that would not allow you to be this amazing resume that I think I am reading right in front of me. Because you know what? Good for you. I got to say it, and maybe it's the wrong thing to say, but yes, you could have done that and stayed in your lane. But I don't think any of us should stay in our lanes. If we can excel and move forward and take our journey somewhere else, and we always need to keep moving forward. And you wanted to move forward. Good for you.
Well, so the following summer, so I felt like during that year, while I was back in college, you go to college not necessarily because you're going to get this great degree, but it's really for networking. It gives you an opportunity to even network with your professors,
Absolutely.
because they're working in something and they'll help you along. So my professor told me that I would never be able to get a job at CFTO TV because it's such a huge market when I graduate, that I'd have to go to a small town like Barrie or all these little towns that being in Toronto, you're a bit of a snob. You don't even know these little towns at like an hour outside of your market when you're young. You don't pay attention to that. So he was like, well, I could probably get you a job interview with the head of CFTO, since, I'm friends with him and you're a good student here. So I got the interview, and it was under the umbrella that I was interviewing Mr. Delaney, who's the vice president of operations of CFTO back then. And I said, Mr. Delaney, when I graduate, I'd love to come and work here. I'll do anything. I'll work in audience relations, whatever it is. He says, you really think you can get out of college and just come to a big market? You are going to have to go to Barrie or these little towns. I was like, I don't even know where these towns are. I don't even know how to get there. I live in Toronto. I could take a subway, out to Scarborough to CFTO. Anyways, he loved the article that I wrote in our school newspaper about him, which to me was a puff piece, because there was so much more I could have, like, darker side. That
Oh,
I probably could have
sure.
said.
Yeah.
But I used the opportunity of being in college to get his attention. Anyways, I graduated, and he ended up putting me in audience relations, so I didn't have to go to a small market. But that I found an outside tool. So this is what I would recommend to other people looking to break into whatever industry they're looking to break into. Find out where the head honcho who does the hiring volunteers. Maybe they volunteer at your local church. Volunteer there. Because it's all about friendships and networking. And of course your talent at the end of the day, has to sustain, but you still need to get your foot in the door. And for me, it was always making up, like, I'm the president of your fan club. That's how I get to meet people.
Yeah.
I got married. My first husband, I'm married now the second time, but anyway, so my first husband turned out to be American. I met him in college, and this was hysterical because he said he was American. I didn't marry him because he was American. I figured he's in school in Canada. So he must have given up his American status to live in Canada. So I said, oh God, I wish you were still in the States, because I really wanted to move to LA one day. Anyways, I just assumed he did not have American status. 5 years into the marriage, still assumed that. And now I was like, we got to get to the States. I can't just die here in Canada and never pursue my dream. My dream was to win Emmys one day. And I said I would never be able to live in Canada and still win Emmys. So he was like, oh, well, I still have dual citizenship. We can still go to the States. I was like, are you kidding me?
5 years in.
5 years in. Anyways, he decided he didn't like LA. He didn't even want to come to LA. So we ended up parting ways on very good terms. But I got my green card. And then I met my husband, who I'm with now for over 30 years. And we have a child. I met my husband at the Improv because I was booking comedians for Good Morning LA, morning talk show.
Yes.
And he was a stand-up writer. He used to write for Rodney Dangerfield, Joan Rivers. He was a comedy writer. And he is a comedy writer still. And he writes sitcoms. So, I'm here. And then I ended up winning the 2 Emmys. Nothing fell in my lap. It was like just pounding the pavement
Right.
and just knocking on as many doors as I can. And that's how my resume built, because if your boss and you connect and they go to a show, they'll take you to that show.
Oh, sure.
So that's the Hollywood story.
Yes, I love your inside Hollywood story. We are chatting here with Hedda Muskat right now, who is a writer, director, producer. And I want to take a little bit of a break so we can then dive into just a little bit more of your projects now. And I have some interesting things to talk about with Ellen DeGeneres and maybe even Kelly Clarkson. So just stay tuned for a second, and we will be right back after these messages. All right, and welcome back to The Scene with Doreen. I'm chatting here with Hedda Muskat, who's a writer, director, producer, has been a writer on The Love Connection for so many years. You've seen her as the talent producer on America's Got Talent. She is a WGA member, which we're going to talk about a little later because that seems to be a little timely. And you've also seen Jimmy Kimmel Live, A Current Affair, America's Got Talent, Dr. Phil, Judge Alex. It goes on and on and on. So I want to dive into this resume that is so beautiful. Hedda, I kind of want to just like share a little story with you because it ties into something I want to talk about with you. But I used to go to school, undergrad school, at the Hart School of Music in University of Hartford, which was Connecticut. And I would fly from Connecticut to Philadelphia to see my boyfriend at the time. And I remember being in coach. And the stewardesses, this was way long ago, the stewardesses were talking about a terrible passenger in first class and how this awful, awful human being was treating them so poorly, and they were just so upset. And I was intrigued. So I heard, I was listening more and more and more. And it turns out that famous person was Ellen DeGeneres. And so my experience before Ellen was Ellen and had her own talk show and everything was this experience of the real people and her treating real people poorly. And I know that you were very brave and you won 2 Emmys being a producer on Ellen's show. And you came out and spoke against with all the toxic environment on her show, which inevitably got canceled, which it should have. But I would love to just learn about that experience with you. And first of all, brava for coming out and talking against it. And I want to let you know that I commiserate because I knew that story even before.
Wow, I had no idea. A lot of times, I work in a bubble, and I don't realize, the toxicity that, goes beyond maybe my work environment. And I hate to say it, I'm glad to hear that because sometimes I feel like I'm the only one. And then when BuzzFeed called me during COVID in 2020, and they said, we're doing an article on Ellen, I go, oh, okay. Well, I said, I haven't been with Ellen for like 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
She fired me after I won my second Emmy on the show. Basically, she fired a lot of, not just her personally, her and the executive producers decided to clean house and bring in different people. Like that's how we get rewarded.
Yes.
By doing a great job. And now it's time to clean house, which is it's not standard, but I've seen it. I've been also a victim of that.
Mm-hmm.
And you just, and you always think, well, what did I do wrong? Obviously that's what I always think. And usually I probably did something wrong. But in this case, I'm going to tell you 110%, I didn't do anything wrong on this show. I've done stuff like, when I tried to rewrite scripts on a job that I wasn't supposed to do. I get that part.
Well, you're supposed to make coffee. Come on now.
Yeah, I would have fired me too. And I have not fired. I hate to use the word fired. It's just such a toxic word itself.
It is.
How about just moving on, letting go?
A reassignment.
Oh, I love that, Doreen. Love that. I think we just have to be a little more gentler. And it's not like, I'm trying to soften the blow. It's still a blow. But I had a feeling I was going to be let go actually for 6 months prior. So 2 seasons I'm there. So about 6 months prior, she just developed this disdain for me. I was older than her, most of the staff. I was already probably in my 50s back then, or late 40s when we started the show.
Mm-hmm.
So I was the first hire on the show to do human interest. And now I get it. She really hated human interest stories.
She hated humans.
Humans, right.
Yeah.
She had no interest. And my boss who hired me was amazing. He was like, Hedda, we know you did a, kick-A job, when you were booking real people on all the other shows you worked on, like Howie Mandel Show, Martin Short Show, Love Connection. Everybody was just real people. All the court shows I worked on, these are real people. And I'm always looking for characters. And I work very hard to tap into like Reddit chat rooms to find real people that are unique. So when my people, and now let's go back to even the Ellen Show, real people aren't just people like news breaking stories. They also, in my big bookings, were the Food Network chefs, like Emeril Lagasse,
Right.
Jella.
The Iron Chefs, the
Yeah.
yes.
We did the Iron Chef shows. We brought in a lot of the chefs.
We had Chef Jose Garces at one point, Iron Chef, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you know how the chefs, I'm going back like when this is the first season when we launched, because they felt that she wasn't going to get A-list stars because of the controversy surrounding when she came out, which I feel sad for, that she didn't deserve that, to be honest with you. She should have been able to come out during her sitcom without the backlash. The reason people despise her now, or because it came out that she's just hasn't been a nice person to a lot of us. Right. I'm sure she's nice to certain people, like she's a kiss ass.
I've heard that she liked the higher up the food ladder, like certain celebrities, she would love those people, but other people that, like you said, the real people, the human interest stories, she didn't have time for those people.
Yeah, so my chefs would leave the show feeling like crap. They said that she would destroy their recipes. And these chefs are artists.
Yes.
You know how much time and effort we would put in to produce the segment. We would work for like days before even to make sure we had every ingredient on set. It was positioned perfectly. Ellen didn't even want to show up to rehearsals to rehearse the recipe. And when she did, she would rush through it, and then it would look like crap. So it affects your work. Right. Because I would say, oh, I didn't produce that. That was an SH show, you know? So the toxic environment isn't like us people can't handle bad behavior. We just can't handle when it affects our work, the quality of our work.
Your livelihood. You're paying the bills. You have to pay your bills too. You know, you're not living on the top of a mansion with, Portia de Rossi or whoever, she was with. That's, you got to pay your bills.
You live from check to check. I knew that there was a lot of issues like for 6 months prior. So I was told, my daughter, who was 12 at the time, when she had school days off, which, wasn't a lot. She was such a good girl, well-behaved. And I'm used to our work environment, when you work on these shows, you're literally there. I would get in at 6 a.m. and leave at 8, 9 at night. So I even had a little couch in my office, and I would take a cat nap, because you're constantly, it's a factory churning out amazing, segments. Right. And it's a 5-day-a-week show, and you have to be present. So I would never see my daughter. So she would sit on the couch and, do her homework. She would take a nap, and on her days off. Well, anyways, and I've done this on other shows, not just me, but other moms and dads would bring their kids to work, for example, but they're well behaved. Obviously, I was never in a situation on any show where, infants were coming, because that's not fair to the infant or the parent at work. Sure. But if they're already older and well behaved, it's my other boss, Stuart Krasnow at the Martin Short Show, used to encourage it. Hey, where's your daughter? They would really make it more heartwarming. Sure. Anyways, I was told, don't bring your kid to work.
Wow.
No, and I was like, okay.
Any reason? Any real reason, or just don't do it?
It's something about Ellen didn't want to see kids in the office. I don't know if she said that, because she didn't say that to me, but that's what I was told by my lower level boss, who said she doesn't want to see kids in the office. Because we would go to the commissary, get our burgers, come back up. So I already knew that
unless it's like Caligula, unless you're running around and you're, doing, amazingly awful things where children shouldn't be exposed, I can't imagine what the point would be for that.
Right. So then I knew there was already a glitch. I already knew, because she never made eye contact with me when I went to tell her about my guests that were going to be on the show this week. Because so she's just, looking at her phone or looking in the ceiling, just so I knew I was already in trouble. But here's what's interesting. I was never going to quit, because I wasn't going to allow a toxic work environment to make me quit, because
Sure.
where am I going? I'm on like a top rated show. Why would I want to leave?
And you won 2
yeah.
Emmys. I mean, why would you say, you know what? I think I'm done now. I mean, seriously?
You can't. You don't
No.
quit. That's why when you read in the paper, so and so left the show, nobody leaves.
Yeah.
You're fired. I mean, that's the real word.
Yeah.
And that's why I say Ellen didn't choose to quit her show. The audience fired her because they got wind of, who she really is, and it just wasn't nice. And then her show got really political. It just wasn't interesting anymore.
Yeah.
So I knew I was in trouble also when my scripts. So even as a reality booker, you write your scripts. You write the intros, the teases, the questions, the tosses, all the setup.
Sure.
You write all that. So my boss took that away from me and said, Ellen doesn't want you writing the script anymore. That's what I was told. Again, she didn't tell me that, but they were telling me it came from her. So my husband, who's a sitcom writer, was like, you're so fired.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I said, I'm not. I'm doing a great job. I just won 1 Emmy. They renewed me for another season. He goes, nope, you're getting fired. And I was like, oh no. So for 6 months, this cloud. And I said, I'm not going to give them a reason to fire me. So I would be there earlier and just fight for the best guests that I can get. But eventually, after I won the 2nd Emmy, I was called in. And this is when I say toxic work environment. Part of it is also watching your peers getting let go for no reason, where it was a revolving door going in. Every Friday was D-Day. So I saw in my boss's office that we had like 3 bosses, including Ellen. People would be going, like Friday was a day when we knew people were being let go. So then when I was called in, I thought I was being called in. Because when I said, I'm being called into the office, like I texted my husband and he was like, so this is the day you're going to get fired. I go, no, I'm
He's very optimistic, isn't he?
Yeah. He's a comedy writer. What can I say?
There you go.
He writes, for the stand-up comics. He used to, like I said, Dangerfield, he used to write all his fun stuff, a lot of his fun stuff, not all, sorry. So I thought, no, I'm going to get a promotion. I'm not getting fired. They love me, even though they pulled me off the scripts. They don't want kids. She doesn't make eye contact. She hates all my guests.
And weren't you banned? You were also banned from her office there for a while, weren't you too?
Yep.
Yeah, that's not a good sign.
Pitch my segments anymore. I said, no, that's because my assistant, was more articulate. And, I was in such denial. I'm not writing my scripts. I'm not on set anymore, briefing my guests. I'm not even pitching my segments, nothing. So my assistant ended up getting my job, and they ended up, I guess, letting that person go about a year after. So now so 15 years, I'm not telling anybody the story, because you know what? I moved on to America's Got Talent and all these other shows. And I had such an amazing run, amazing career, even though in my gut, I couldn't stand her. And I did want to take this, week of showers just to cleanse myself. But because when you're in it, you're blind. You just think this is how she just is. And I'm a tough person. I can tough it out. And I would have toughed it out.
Yeah.
So I didn't, why whine about it? I had such an amazing experience meeting the most amazing people. So BuzzFeed calls me in 2020 and I'm like, what? I said, I haven't even been with the show for 15 years. What's going on? And they said, well, we're going to be coming out with an expose on her. I go, okay, so I don't care. I'm basically retired now. I'm doing documentaries and I'm writing books. It's really not my thing. And they were like, well, can we just ask you a few questions? Did you witness this? Did you experience this? And I went, yes. Who cares? Wine. And then they were like, I was like, well, how many people are coming forward that you're interviewing? Like 4 or 5 people? They said, no, about 54.
Wow.
And I was like, what?
Yeah, 1, 2, 5, but 54, it's hard to deny that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I got to tell, I was traumatized after I got fired because it took me about a good year and a half to get another job. And my husband wasn't on any show back then. So we were living off of unemployment insurance, and it was devastating to get fired. And my boss was like, when they brought me in to fire me, they said, you did nothing wrong. She just wants to, we're taking the show in a different direction.
That's always there. Yeah, that's
it's a friggin' talk show.
Yeah, I know. What direction are you going?
Are you taking?
You're going to sing everything now instead of talk it?
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So, anyways, when I said, she said, so the girl who interviewed me from BuzzFeed, Christy Yolande, who just broke the Kelly Clarkson
I want to
story.
talk about that as well
Yeah,
because
she's the
that's
same.
coming back now. Mm-hmm.
It's the same girl. She's an amazing journalist. So
Mm-hmm.
she says, "Don't worry, Hedda. I'm not gonna mention your name in the article because everybody wants to be anonymous." I said, "The 54 people want to be anonymous." She says, "Well, it's probably going to be more people because I'm still talking to people."
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Anonymous? That's not going to lend credibility to the story."
True.
Everybody's like, and I get why they want to be anonymous. And if my daughter was in that situation, I would tell her to be anonymous too. I said, my career is in a different direction now itself. There's no
Right.
way I'm going to work. They're not hiring me on the talk shows because I'm too old. And so I said, Christy, if you need to use my name, I'm fine with that
Good
because
for
what I'm
you.
telling you is the truth. It's what I experienced. I'm sure Ellen is amazing to certain people, but to me, I didn't feel that
Well, that
love.
was your
Yeah,
experience, and you're allowed
right.
to tell your experience. Plus, you had been removed for it for almost, over a decade. So it was a little easier also for you to say, you know what, I've moved on. I'm pretty solid where I am. Yeah, I agree with you. I applaud you for coming out and saying it.
So that's what happened. Then when I came forward with my name, I think Tony the DJ came forward, and then two or three other people, but that's it. And
Mm.
then for whatever reason, that she came forward and said she wants to quit her show.
Oh, yes.
So
Uh-huh.
whatever,
Yeah.
she's a billionaire. I
She's
don't
good. Yeah, I'm
care.
not too
I want
crying
look
over
at I
that.
want her to be well. Work on a farm. She could with the pigs and the dogs and the cows. But I want her to be happy there. I think
Yes.
because someone like that needs to be in an environment with
Yeah.
these species
Yes.
to connect with.
Needs to,
So
yes.
yeah,
Well, it's interesting because you did
yeah,
bring up Kelly Clarkson, and I know that
yeah.
I had seen you kind of tease that a little bit on social media. Now, that's coming out to light. I don't think a lot of people have heard about it yet. With Kelly Clarkson, the same kind of toxic environment is now coming out. Now, are they now contacting you to relive all this again to kind of add validity now to the Kelly Clarkson situation?
Yes, but I've said no. I'm not doing I gave two interviews about my experience at Ellen
Mm-hmm.
when it first happened. That was to Inside Edition, and then I got a call from all the other shows. I said, no, no. Once I tell the story, I'm not interested
Mm-hmm.
in doing it because this was not about me, what is it, tearing Ellen apart. It was just when they asked me, I wasn't gonna lie
Right.
about my experience. And even now, I'm not going into all the details because I don't need to because it's already out there. So with
Yes.
the Kelly Clarkson show, I do know some of the people that work there, but it's not my experience. So it would be really, I think, inappropriate for me to comment on that. All
Mm-hmm.
I could say is that I believe them,
Yes.
I don't, it takes a lot of courage to want to tell Christy the story, your story. So even though I don't believe any names came out, it's anonymous. I also believe that Kelly Clarkson did not know what's going on, that she is shielded. It's different. Ellen was very hands-on with the show.
Oh, she was part of the discussions from what I've
Part,
researched. Yeah.
yeah,
And she
she was.
contributed to those discussions.
Oh
Yes.
yeah, she was at all our pitch meetings.
Hmm.
When we would, after we pitched and got approval, then when we wrote our shows, she would be part of our meetings to go over that day's segment. So she was very hands-on the show, and she is extremely talented. I'm not going to take any of that away from her.
Hmm.
She's brilliantly talented, but
Be nice. Be a
it
nice person.
just be nice
Yes, that's all it is.
to
Be
certain
nice.
people. Yeah.
Yeah.
So with Kelly, I really believe she does not know
Right.
what's going on, that she is shielded from a lot.
Hmm.
And they mentioned an executive producer who I know her, our paths have crossed, and I don't know. I mean, if the people said it happened, why would they make it up?
I agree. And people don't realize how hard, like you were saying, that how hard that is to come forward, even if you're anonymous or not, to, like you said, speak to somebody and be grilled with details. And it's not the easiest thing. People just don't enjoy doing this. This is their livelihood, and they're not wanting to blow up their world just for whatever reason. That's, I always believe. I believe before I don't. So, I agree
Well,
with
it
you.
is it is a culture. Now I'm wondering if Christie's going after the Drew Barrymore show and all these other daytime shows, because there's definitely a pattern, on these shows. I was super lucky with working on the Howie Mandel talk show, which was like 20 years ago. Uh, Howie couldn't have been nicer,
Hmm.
and he was like also very hands-on. Uh, and the people he brought on as executive producers couldn't have been more courteous. And it's not about, oh, I need everybody to like, what is it, pat me on the back. It wasn't about that. It was just about like having constructive criticism. So if your segment sucked, they would say it really didn't work. It failed, and this is why it failed,
Yeah.
without berating you, making you feel like crap. So that was I'm spoiled. I can't. And then I worked on the Martin Short show
Hmm.
with Bernie Burlstein was our boss, and Stuart Krasnow, and they created a culture of just amazement, where you can really, my work shined. I really could have won Emmys for that, because I felt my segments were so much even better because they weren't torpedoed
Hmm.
by negativity.
Yeah.
So, then when I came to Ellen, it was like, whoa, it like hit me like a ton of bricks. Like here, my first day at work, everything is, you're setting up your little desk with your
Oh,
pictures and
yeah.
your
You're so
plants.
excited. I
You're so
know.
excited.
Your
Hey,
mug.
hi,
Yes.
hi,
Uh-huh.
your mug. Hi, Ellen. I'm looking forward to bringing you some amazing guests. And it's
Hmm.
like, oh, okay, yeah. Like sneering. And I was like, okay, whatever. I can put up with that.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, when it turns to the level of toxicity where it's harmful, yeah, it has to
Well,
end.
I still would have put up with it. It's just that they let me go, so I couldn't put up with it when you're fired.
Well, it was
You know,
good because that propelled you to now then you went to America's Got Talent and you became the original talent producer for that show, which is quite its own show. That's still going. So,
I love it. And they still use the template. Apparently, I was told by one of the executives that, that I set up for the judging, before it makes it to taping. It's like when you're doing all the auditions.
sure. Yes.
Actually, I have a real quick story. I was hired by Simon Cowell's business partner, back then. And I wrote a show Bible on where I thought the show would go, which was the worst of the worst talent and the best of the best. Like it can't be in the middle. The
Hmm.
show I didn't see the show working if it was just mediocre talent or just kind of bad. It had to be like crazy bad, or crazy like A-list amazing.
Yes.
And that was hard to do because to find the A-list, it was easier to find the crazy bad.
Yeah.
How
Oh,
about that?
absolutely. There's a lot more of that.
How about that? And what I respected was, I remember sitting at a meeting at NBC when they were asking, us, what's the show going to be? And that's what came out.
Hmm.
And then I set up for the casting, which was a national casting, template. So when you go into audition, you mark zero, was it 1 to 5?
Hmm.
1 is the worst of the worst, 5 was the best of the best. And so I would take all the sheets from the casting directors that were worldwide. They would email me the sheets, and all the sheets that had the ones would go in the yes pile. Like that's definitely the people we're going to want to audition because they're going to be the worst of the worst. But anytime my casting director circled like a 3 or a 4, no, sorry, 3,
Hmm.
we would kind of like put those in the no pile, because that means they're okay, but not great.
They're in the middle of the road. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And that's not going to make a show.
No, you're right.
So I was there for 2 seasons, and then they brought me back a few years later,
Mhm.
to do specialty booking. And I had a great experience there. I love the people there.
That's
So I've been
awesome.
very lucky, even on, in Hot Bench and all the other shows. Judge Judy runs Hot Bench, and she's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard good things. You would think that would
Yeah.
be the one that would not be nice, and yet I've heard really good things.
And you would think Simon Cowell wouldn't be nice, but
Yeah.
he was amazing.
Yep.
And so respectful, like even to my daughter. Like in the audition room, you're really not allowed to bring people in there. And
Mhm.
again, my daughter's now like, well, back then probably she was like 12 or 13.
Mhm.
And he would whisper to me, he goes, "Who's that?" I go, "Oh, my daughter." And she's like reading Vogue magazine. She couldn't even care less,
Yeah.
And he was like, he went over and said hi to her.
Aw.
So yeah,
That's cool.
so there's nothing wrong with being nice.
I agree. That's like the theme that I think people need to just learn. And that's the theme of the show. Just be nice. It doesn't take a lot. It really doesn't, to just be nice to people. And it doesn't, everybody wants something or they do something because they think they're going to get something out of it. And you know what? Just be nice. That's it.
Well, a lot of people bring their dysfunction
Oh,
to the
yes.
office. And I mean, you watch, like I'm watching, scrolling on TikTok, watching all these, Karens, on TikTok.
Yes.
And I got to hand it to these amazing employees who put up with that.
Yeah.
They're trained. They could have, I mean, I love some of the UPS or Walmart employees that actually jump over the counter and want to strangle the Karen. I kind of like, I was like, okay, you're probably going to get fired for bad customer service.
Yes, true. True.
But I probably would be the one that's going to jump over the counter. I don't think I have it in me to allow that person to berate me.
Well, on that note, I'm going to take one more little short break before we wrap things up. I do want to talk. You have written several books, but you've written several on dating. And I know that you were on the Love Connection. So I think it'd be cool just to talk about dating and dating post-COVID and things like that and just get your take on everything. So when we come back right after this break, we will finish up the show. And we're talking with Hedda Muskat. So stay tuned. We're back with The Scene with Doreen. And of course, we're here on Talk 860 WWDB AM 97.5 FM HD2. And I'm chatting with Hedda Muskat. And we are having a glorious conversation, all things Hollywood. And we're talking about Ellen. And there's so much. I could have like a whole 3-part series. I say this a lot about my guests. My guests are fascinating. There's too much to talk about, but especially you, Hedda. I even wanted to get into the writer's strike because I know that's going on and this is going to air. We're actually taping this early. And just quickly, I wanted you to touch on that because we're now Sunday. This will air on Thursday. It may be over by then, but since we're in this world right now, I know you're a member of WGA. How do you feel about what's going on right now?
Oh, I've supported 1,000%. I'm marching in the picket line. As writers, we've been really taken advantage of as far as our payment. So if you working on a show, let's say when I was working even on Love Connection, how I survived after Love Connection ended was on the residuals and the royalties, and that's the reruns of the show.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because it reran, in different, like maybe on Game Show Network or whatever. And because then you're out of work for 2 years, so you're relying on your residuals, and that goes towards health and pension. I mean, that's our livelihood. That's how we survive. And there wouldn't be a show, it would be a blank page if we didn't have the writers. Our motto is then just go write it yourself.
Yeah.
If we're that invaluable. So now with the streaming like Hulu and Netflix, they've taken away, like, so instead of making, let's say you should be making, I'm going to just give it like $100 every time your show streams.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you're getting $1 or $2.
Oh, welcome. That's the music industry. Hello. We get a penny every time, a percentage of a penny every time we stream. So now you're welcome to join us songwriters now.
Absolutely. And I totally support lyricists and musicians.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, anybody, authors of books. I think I'm making 50 cents a book on my first book that I got published.
It's crazy.
Yeah. So I think with the writers, because it is a union, they try to renegotiate for better streaming, money, because the streaming services are charging, more money to the consumer. You're paying more for your Hulu, Netflix subscription, and the writers are not getting any of that. And that's just one of them. The other big thing is that what's called artificial intelligence, like AI writing.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, there's no protection for writers. So what happens if, my husband being a sitcom writer, he'll write maybe a sitcom, and then how he makes his money would be on a rewrite even. So then he would get called in and make a rewrite. Well, now they're saying they can put that first draft through AI, and it just spits out all this new kind of wording, and then that takes place of the writer ever being able to do a rewrite. So there's all sorts of little things, like not little things, it adds up.
Yes.
So, but, really anybody outside of the LA or the industry may not really care about that, but where they should care is that it's going to affect the quality of the programming that you're going to
Absolutely.
watch.
You're not seeing Stranger Things. You're not going to be seeing your favorite show because of it's now delayed. You're not going to be seeing your late night shows because they have gone. They're done right now. People are going to be out of work because of the crews and the people like the makeup artists and the wardrobes and the grips and the lighting. They can't be on set anymore. So it's going to down. It's going to trickle down, and it's going to affect everybody at some point.
And these people, the suits that I call them, are really making like billions of dollars.
Oh, of course.
So the writers aren't asking, for share of like huge profits, but just a crumb more.
Right.
Because
and protection.
when you're, and you don't, like, people think it's big money. Oh, you're going to make 30,000 for, let's say, a half-hour sitcom script. But usually if you're not on staff, if you've just sold a script or they've commissioned you to write a script, you're usually splitting that money with your partner. So after taxes, you're really not left with a lot. Maybe that's the only script you're going to write the whole year. So that's why the streaming is so critical to just keep you alive a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're kind of running like late with time. So before we wrap up, I want to talk, because I know you were on the Love Connection. It was kind of one of your biggest things in the beginning. You were a writer on that show, and you mentioned it several times. You also did write some books. One was Dating Mystique, Finally Revealed, Unmasking the Secrets to Find True Love, and also Dating Confidential, A Secret's Guide to Fun, Flirtatious, and Possibly Meaningful Social Life. And I would love to dig into it, and I may have like a post-show kind of thing with you at some point. But just real quick, I know that you've talked about dating, the Love Connection. Let's just say after post-COVID and with everything going on, what do you think is the biggest rule or the biggest change now in the dating world?
Oh my God, the big one, which is scary as crap. Oh my God, is how people are being scammed.
I did not know this.
And it's not really anything to do with COVID. It has to just do with what's going on now, technology. I support online dating, but you have to be so careful. And please never give out your banking information, or when you meet someone, start looking at the red flags. If a man or even a woman, if they start really talking about how much money they have and how rich they are, they're probably not, because really rich people don't talk about it.
True. It is true.
They're not going to brag about all the properties.
Smart people don't tell you how smart they are. Kind people don't always have to tell you how kind they are. Yeah, it's the same. It definitely applies. You're right.
So the big thing that is happening now is the scamming. Men are being scammed too by women, but mostly women for some reason. Maybe more.
We're trusting. We're trusting on a more, generality. You don't hate to do it, but it's true. We are a more trusting part of it, and we want to believe that fairy tale exists. We want to believe that Prince Charming is out there, so we're looking for that. And unfortunately, I don't think that exists. There will be maybe a version of it, but it will not be the Disney version of it out there.
So that's the big thing right now in the dating world, is just being careful about being scammed. So like if I was to go back in the dating world, or even my friends that are dating and they meet someone on Match.com or whatever, these Bumble, I don't know. You still want to find who knows these people. Like, where do they, who are their families? Who are their friends?
Right.
And just start, if they're total ghosts in society, like you can't Google them and find anything, that's a problem.
Yeah, nothing is ungoogleable now, if that's a word. Everybody's Googleable.
Yeah, I've Googled names on people that my friends have met online, and I'm like, nothing's coming up on this person at all.
Yeah.
Like they're totally like in the shadows.
Yeah. Yeah. So on that note, because we are running out of time, I want to just real quick, where can people find you, your website? How do people reach out to you?
So I would say just go to Amazon.com, and The Dating Mystique is a great book because it's based on all the stuff I learned working on Love Connection, all the tips you need for the first date, all the red flags, and it's called The Dating Mystique by Hedda Muskat.
I will put a link when this episode airs. I will make sure to add a link so that everybody can just click link, go and buy the book. And it's been a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much, Hedda, for being with us. Hedda Muskat, everyone. Also to my listeners, thank you again for tuning in to The Scene with Doreen. I'm here each and every Thursday morning at 8 a.m. bringing you the best interviews from the entertainment world and beyond. Get connected with me on social media and on our official website, www.thescenewithdoreen.